This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day to end the month of June, it's June 30th of 1993. The NBA draft happened. And it was a very good draft class. There were some talented people, but there were four All-Stars whose careers ended due to injuries. Two of them had some very good player stuff, but off the court they had personal problems. And one player actually had a career derailed by a car wreck, even though he was a legend in college. There were a lot of people who just couldn't make the thing after round pick 13, with one exception. So anyway, the 93 NBA season was going to be there with the draft lottery. So anyway, the 93 NBA draft lottery happened. What happened was the worst team in the NBA. There were 11 teams that did not make the playoffs. The worst team would get 11 chances to make the putt out of 66. Then 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Dallas, with 11 wins in the 93 season, had the best chance to win the draft lottery, with Minnesota with 19 wins taking second and Washington third with the third most chances. Down the list came Orlando at 41-41, a 500 season. They missed the playoffs by one game, so they had one freaking ping pong ball, probability 1.5%. NBC did the draft lottery live, and then Bob Costas was doing this up. Philly or Orlando. Because shockingly, Dallas didn't get the number one pick, neither did Minnesota, Washington, or Sacramento. So the top four teams with the picks didn't get it. Philly would go next. Philly or Orlando. The fifth highest odds are the worst odds. It went to and second pick goes to the Philadelphia 76ers. Costas was like, unbelievable. And believe it or not, the first overall pick goes to the Orlando Magic. Pat, come up here. That'd be Pat Williams. This is in the category go figure, as Bob Costas would say. Of course, go figure was a popular thing in Sports Illustrated about numbers and all that. So with the first pick, Orlando picked the guy that everyone thought would be number one coming out of college, the sophomore superstar from Michigan, Chris Webber. Webber was part of the Fab Five that led Michigan all the way to the championship in 1992, losing to Duke, and then in 93 when they lost to North Carolina. And lest we forget that, yes, Chris Webber is the guy who made a boneheaded move by calling timeout when Michigan didn't have any timeouts. But then again, I mean, in defense of Webber, he was being double teamed, and that was his automatic move. So anyway, Chris Webber would be picked by the Magic. But in a shocking move, well, later, that wasn't the case. Anyway, number two went to Philly, and they took a freshman from BYU by the name of Sean Bradley. Why? Because he was 7'6". They needed a shot blocker. They needed a center. They needed a good defender and all that. The last great Sixer center was Moses Malone. Golden State went third and picked from Memphis, or as they were known at the time, Memphis State. They picked from Memphis Penny Hardaway, who was a pretty good guard for Memphis and all that. However, Orlando made a gigantic move, trading Webber to Golden State for the one of Penny Hardaway. And it was like, why would you trade the number one pick? You made a good pick and then you trade him for the number three pick? Why? Orlando probably needed a good point guard and all that. And after all, I mean, Shaq was at center for the Magic. Although he could have been power forward to Shaq center. Regardless of that, the trade actually worked out. Yes, Chris Webber had a fantastic career with Sacramento, among other teams. And he was pretty good. And unfortunately, his career was tainted by the fact that his college career. He was paid by a booster and ruined Michigan's reputation, and they had to take down those NCAA finalist banners from the 90s because of that. So yeah, Chris Webber had a great job with Sacramento. Anyway, Penny Hardaway would actually be a star for the Magic and would actually get in commercials, in Sprite commercials. But yeah, he was a good guard. Orlando never really had a good guard. So yeah, so it all worked out for the Magic. For Philly, Sean Bradley was around for a few years. He did okay and then was traded to Dallas, where he played well. With the fourth pick, Dallas, the team that should have won the draft lottery but didn't, took from Kentucky a junior by the name of Jamal Mashburn. It seemed like a good move. I mean, Mashburn was a pretty good player for Kentucky, and he was a pretty good NBAer. Minnesota went fifth and took from UNLV starting guard Isaiah Ryder, who was pretty good and had played for UNLV in the 90 and 91 campaigns. The 90 campaign that saw them blow the crap out of Duke in the final and lose to Duke in the semifinal by 2 points. Unfortunately, Isaiah Ryder had some off court problems. He had the potential, but he just couldn't get things going off court. And also the fact that Ryder was around when UNLV was stripped of things because of the improper payments. Washington went 6 overall and took Calbert Chaney from Indiana, who seemed to be a good player under the Bobby Knight system. So Washington knew what they were doing, or tried to do what they're doing. Unfortunately, though, Chaney became an NBA bust. 7th overall pick went to Sacramento, who took the legend from Duke, senior Bobby Hurley. It was like, why would Orlando, Philly, Golden State, Dallas, Minnesota, and Washington pass on this guy? Like, are you kidding? Dallas actually had Jason Kidd, who they picked up in the previous draft. So, well, no, they would have taken Jason Kidd in '94. So they Golden State, well, they had Tim Hardaway. The Sixers could have used a good point guard. I don't know who their sixth point guard was. Orlando, well, they went for Penny Hardaway. Minnesota, I don't know who their point guard was. Pooh Richardson? I don't know. But yeah, Minnesota could have taken him. Washington didn't really have a good point guard. But yeah, Sacramento hit the jackpot. Bobby Hurley was falling in their lap. So he went 7th overall. And you'd be thinking, well, they made the steal of the draft. Unfortunately, bad news. In December, he got into a massive car accident. And his career basically derailed from there. So bad luck ruined Bobby Hurley from Sacramento making the true steal of the first round of the '93 NBA draft. Milwaukee went 8th overall and took from the University of Hartford senior Finn Baker, who would be a better player for maybe Seattle. But yeah, he was a Bucks icon who got in commercials himself too. He did quite well. It was a start. Denver took 9th overall from Wake Forest junior and power forward Rodney Rogers, who was a pretty good player for Wake Forest. Detroit took after, well, Miami had the 10th pick but traded to Detroit. The Pistons took number 10, Lindsey Hunter, point guard from Jackson State. The Pistons had the number 11 pick as well and took Allen Houston from Tennessee. Hard to believe that Allen Houston actually was picked by the Pistons. I thought the Knicks took him in the draft and all that. Wow, he actually played from '93 to '96 with Detroit and then went to the Knicks. Huh, I did not know that. Anyway, there were some decent picks. George Lynch from the national champion North Carolina Tar Heels went to the Lakers, but he wouldn't do well in Lakers. He would do better in Charlotte. Sam Cassell went 24th overall and shocked a lot of people by being so low from Florida State. Houston took a chance on him, and Cassell won 3 NBA titles. So it all worked. Romania would take, well, Washington would take, well, after Philly took 7-6 Sean Bradley. With the 30th overall pick, Washington took from France a center for Romania by the name of George Mursan, who was 7'7". So that was huge and all that. The Lakers picked 37th overall and took Nick Van Axel from Cincy, from the University of Cincy. And it actually worked out. Van Axel was a pretty good player for the Lakers. So, yeah, a lot of people were undrafted. Bruce Bowen was undrafted, though he did well with the Spurs. And that was it. Practically, that was all there was. So, as I talked about, you know, personal problems, Finn Baker also had personal problems too. But people forget that Weber, Hardaway, Houston, and Mashburn, their careers were basically cut short by injuries. Although it must be said, they did pretty good for themselves. And yes, Orlando may have traded the picked Chris Webber number 1 and then traded him to Golden State. But they got Penny Hardaway. They got a good point guard to complement Shaq when Shaq was with the Magic. And Webber went on to do better things, although for Sacramento. But still, it is what it is. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Edu.